was very conscious that this was a great opportunity for Perth and for Western Australia. Here we had the royal couple, Queen and Prince Phillip. We had 50 Prime Ministers and Presidents of the Commonwealth countries here. We had a huge number of international media covering the events over those 3 days. So I was quite determined that Perth would put on the best possible show we could in everything that was done. In 2009, CHOGM was held in the Caribbean, in Trinidad and Tobago. And the next CHOGM was meant to be held in Sri Lanka in 2011, but Sri Lanka was going through some political unrest, so the view was that Sri Lanka wouldn't happen. Stephen Smith, West Australian, was Australia's Foreign Minister. Stephen rang me from the Caribbean and said, "Do you think we could host it in Perth?" And I said, "Yes, of course we can."
The Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, or CHOGM, it's coming to Perth in 2011. A meeting of 54 world leaders led by the Queen.
Lynn and I visited the Queen in June of 2011 in the lead up to CHOGM for that and for a number of other reasons. The West Australian government had made a decision to build what is now Elizabeth Quay, and a lot of people thought it was a strange decision, but basically I decided that it would be Elizabeth Quay, not just Perth Quay or Perth Harbour. And all the advice I was getting was obviously that the Queen would need to agree to that, but I shouldn't raise it with her. It should be done indirectly through protocol, through ambassadors and the like. And I accepted that if that was the way the Royal House would operate. And we met with the Queen for around 20 minutes in her private apartment in Buckingham Palace. It was only the Queen, Lynn and I, no one else in the room. The corgi dogs were scratching at the door to come in. It was a unique experience. And the meeting was going well, and I thought, well, this seems to be very friendly, very informal. And I had a diagram of what Elizabeth Quay would look like, so I thought, oh, I'm going to raise it. And I just said, Your Majesty, we're going to recreate a port at Perth, and she knew Perth very well. And I said, I'd like to call it Elizabeth Quay. And she said, oh, that'd be nice. And I thought, job done. I think she just wanted to be reassured that everything was in place, and it was. The rules of the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting are very strict. Each one of the 50 countries has to have an equal position around the table. So you need a big table, and no country can be seen to be superior to another, including Britain. And it wasn't easy to find. Hence the building of this facility, the State Reception Centre in Kings Park, with spectacular views of Perth and the Swan River. And that's how it happened.
The top floor, now covered by a canvas marquee, will be transformed into a glass and steel structure.
Everybody will be there going, oh, look at that.
Well, the Queen and Prince Phillip arrived at the airport at 4 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon. So that was our first contact.
The Queen in hot pink, a dapper Prince Phillip by her side. The royal couple greeted by state dignitaries.
Oh, I was a bit nervous. I didn't want to make a mistake. That was a very brief event, and they'd done a lot of travel, so they went from the airport straight to Government House where they stayed.
It's from here the Queen will reign over the Commonwealth for the next 3 days, the business end of her Australian tour.
There were people along the road, not huge crowds, but people were conscious the Queen was coming through. And in fact, everywhere that the Queen and Prince Phillip went, there were crowds of people. One thing that really impressed me about Her Majesty was her work ethic. Everything ran to time. She was courteous and happy and smiling. Hard work to do that continuously. Prince Phillip was a bit more independent in the way he carried on, but yeah, she did the job superbly of meeting rich countries, poor countries. Remarkable, the attention and knowledge she had. Well, the Queen made a visit to the Clontarf Academy, which is an academy really designed for young Aboriginal children to be committed to their education. I remember a couple of students came up with a little pot of kangaroo tail soup for the Queen, and I thought, I wonder if she's going to eat that.
Recently made.
The state reception function was a major event held in the gardens of Government House. There were some 1,800 guests from right across the state, school children flown in from different schools right across Western Australia in their school uniforms, lovely West Australian food and West Australian wines. An area, like essentially a figure eight, was roped off, and my job was just to walk along with the Queen and make sure it all went well. When we crossed in the figure eight, Lynn and I sort of passed each other, and I just quietly said to her, how are you going? And she said, oh, I've got a runaway train here. So Prince Phillip was just playing games and things, and it was lovely for her. The Queen was probably a little bit more formal and just sort of stayed with me as I sort of guided her. Western Australia traditionally would give a gift to the Queen on a royal visit. Someone discovered down in the bowels of the State Library there were 2 volumes of a very famous West Australian artist, Philippa Nicolinski, drawings of Australian botanical species, native plants. And so the idea was, well, we can give one of those to the Queen. I'm standing there on the dais with Queen, Prince Phillip and Lynn there. I was just about to announce that, and we're going to present Your Majesty with a book of these drawings of West Australian wildflowers by an artist, well-known artist, Philippa. And for once, I forgot the surname, and I was going Philippa, Nika, and just stumbling. And she was right down in front, and Prince Philip jumped up and said, there she is, she's waving at you. And so it became quite funny. And I finally got Philippa Nicolinski and handed the book over to the Queen. And while I was just continuing my comments on it, the Queen was flicking through the book. Absolutely, you could tell she loved it. And then we went back and sat down. I was seated next to the Queen, and about 3 minutes went by, and then she leant across right into my face and said, one of those difficult names, was it? And that was the nature, little jokes along the way. One of the things was the little interplay between the Queen and the Duke, and that it was just like your neighbours, to put it bluntly. And I know when the state reception was concluded and the Queen and I sort of walked back up the pathway to Government House, we're standing in the car park, and the Queen turned around and said, hey, where's Philip? She was quite annoyed. He was about 100 yards back still talking to children and guests, so they didn't hide that. So there's the Queen, her lady in waiting, and I just standing in the car park waiting for Philip to arrive. And there were lots of funny little moments like that, and I think they could see the humour in it too. All of the events, private visits, CHOGM itself, the cocktail function at Government House, and then the huge public Aussie barbecue could not have gone better.
On the Swan River foreshore, this great Aussie barbecue, a final farewell gesture.
The idea was from Prince Phillip. When he became aware that the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting was to be held in Perth and there would be also a state visit as part of it, he came up with the idea of let's have a big Aussie barbecue. So everyone thinks, well, okay, how do we do that?
We can't tempt you with a little taste.
All the food and that was all donated by West Australian-based businesses. And it was a great idea because that was totally a public event. Anyone could come, and they did. The estimate that the police made of the crowd was 120,000 people. A huge turnout. And some people suggested that was perhaps the biggest crowd the Queen had ever had outside of Britain at an event.
I can think of no more fitting way to end my visit here than in this idyllic Swan River setting, which I have enjoyed on so many occasions.
They really spent just the whole time talking to people and receiving little gifts. And Lynn tells me that at one stage she was walking with Prince Phillip and a little girl came up with a little posy for the Queen, and the Queen was, on the other side of the walk. And Prince Phillip said, oh, is that for the Queen? The little girl said yes, and he said, would you like me to give it to her? So he took the posy and walked across to the Queen and gave it to her. Little personal things like that were just lovely. I think what we both enjoyed was the little personal comments they'd make to us. If they saw something a bit funny, they'd sort of whisper something as they went past. So we felt very privileged. When the Queen and Prince Phillip left the great Aussie barbecue, going to the airport, I was relieved. And I think I went and had a beer. Impossible not to be impressed by their stamina, to put it bluntly. It was an arduous week, and I only saw parts of the royal visit. The Queen was also doing CHOGM and meeting heads of state of Commonwealth countries, so an incredibly hectic program, just kept going, and at no time did they show any sign of impatience or tiredness, just gave personal attention to every person they met. Remarkable performance. I don't think I could have done that, to be honest. such a long life, I think people will be thankful and admire what the Queen has achieved. You know, going back to the early 1950s when she was crowned, and so I think there's huge respect and appreciation of everything that she has done. The person of the century in many respects. No one has been through and experienced so many British Prime Ministers, so many changes to the Commonwealth, so many American presidents as Queen Elizabeth II. She will have a place in history forever.